This is the Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining us. Today, we have an exciting new segment for you, the Investor Connect How to Invest series. We're revisiting some of the smart insights, tips, and advice from our past guests on the show. To start off the series, we will be touching on the biotech and life science subject. So let's dive right in and hear the answers to the question I posed to each of our guests back in 2021. What makes for a successful company in this segment? Our first guest is Carter Williams, CEO and managing partner of iSelect Fund.
We are a venture fund. We focus on starts in our investments in the seed and A stage and invest throughout the entire life cycle of the companies. We focus in and around the area of food and health.
Let's hear his perspective on building a successful company in the biotech and life science space.
I think, whenever you're creating a new company, it's the same thing that, what's the most important thing that every startup needs? A customer. And the reason they need that customer is because if you're going to create something new and differentiated, if you're going to create something that can beat the incumbents, you not only have to have something that's more productive and efficient, something that's more affordable, but something that's more pleasing. And the way you build a pleasing product is you pay attention to customers, you listen to customers, you hear their idiosyncrasies, and people who are good entrepreneurs can listen to that and then see a pathway through in which they can deliver a better quality product that's also a more productive product, so better and cheaper. And those are the people that are always going to succeed. It's true in agriculture. Some people believe that some of the climate issue will come in and change people's perspective, and people will pay more to have a more climate-friendly type of solution. We still think that our responsibility in the agriculture side is to build a better, cheaper product, and better means that it's a tastier and more nutritious product, but also one that perhaps scores better on the sustainability path, and that it's just inherent in the product, and a better, cheaper product that inherently is more sustainable. When I think about venture capital, we think about changing technology that's going to influence the world for the next 20, 25 years. I'm an engineer at heart and sort of a geek in this regard. That people would call those orthogonal variables. You can't build a better product, build a cheaper product, and make it more sustainable. As an engineer, I think of my job is just to make it so that all three can be achieved: better, cheaper, and more sustainable. And so I think that the winners, the people who should be the winners, the people that will be the winners, will be the ones that can engineer it into the product. There will be attempts and distractions in which we create sort of carbon markets and such that will pay for it for a while, but sooner or later, we're going to figure out a way to make it more efficiently and make it more sustainable. I don't think those are trades that are permanently stuck to be opposing forces.
Now let's move on to our next guest, Maximilian Bad, founding partner at Nucleus Capital.
We are a new venture capital firm supporting purpose-driven entrepreneurs, trying to solve, some of those very pressing planetary health and human health challenges that we face today.
What does he believe contributes to a successful biotech and life science company? Let's find out.
That's a very broad question. I mean, for me as an early stage investor, kind of joining a company when this is also where the name comes from, and my name comes from Nucleus Capital. It's really the nucleus of the company, right? So it's the starting point where everything comes together. And I think at that particular stage, the companies that we are looking at typically are still at lab scale. So they have some kind of proof of concept in the lab at very low yield levels or very low output levels, but they've proven that the core science works, right? They can produce a product. So if we remain with the chocolate example, they have an alpha version of the chocolate that somewhat tastes like chocolate. It's a little bit sweet, but they definitely nailed the chocolate taste already. And at the end of the day, the team is, of course, what matters, right? So you have to have scientific co-founder who's capable of actually executing in the lab and knowing what she does. And on the other side, you always have to have somebody who's, the business mind, commercial mind. And I think if you mix this together and the timing is right and you have this killer cocktail, then that becomes a very exciting opportunity for us to look at as an investment. So we've invested in a couple of companies at the exact intersection. So, for example, Orbillion Bio, which is out of Berkeley, California, and Patricia Bubner, who is the CEO originally from Austria. I think we are actually the only European investor in her cap table. And she's producing the first heritage meat in a cell cultured way. So she uses lab grown or lab cultivated, she's producing lab cultivated meat and doing so for Wagyu as well as bison and elk. So what she calls heritage meats. Another company that we're involved in is called Hoxton Farms, which is based out of London, the UK, and they produce cell cultured fat. And fat might not seem as sexy as you think, but it's essentially one of the most important ingredients in meat, so to speak, right? Fat is like responsible for the taste, it's responsible for the structure. Mm-hmm. So that's the other part of the spectrum. And then last but not least, I recently announced our investment in a company called Yuri. And Yuri is a company out of Germany, which is operating at the intersection of synthetic biology and space tech. What they're doing is they've developed a hardware device, which is essentially a very, very tiny bioreactor that they can shoot up to the ISS, to the space station, where they can conduct research experiments as well as product development in microgravity. And they leverage, so to speak, microgravity to produce entirely new materials and do some research on the life science as well as material front.
Our next guest is Oren Aloni-Charas, MD, who is the managing partner of the Global Health Impact Fund.
I am the managing partner and CEO of an emerging fund called the Global Health Impact Fund. We're a doctor-centric fund. I would say 80 to 90% of our limited partners actually in the first fund were doctors.
Let's hear his thoughts on what it takes to build a successful company in the biotech and life science sector.
Well, that's complicated. I think that when I look at a company, I look at three major areas. Number one, I look at their clinical solution and what its application is and what the growth is, who will use it and who will benefit from it, and who's the decision maker, all of the things around that. And we really try and look deeply at the science underlying the propositions, the value propositions that are being made. If the companies pass through that, then the next step is looking at the actual business. How does it grow? Who are they selling to? Are there payer codes? What does insurance think about it? And if they pass through that, then we look at the capital risk. How much capital do they need? What is their valuation? At what point can they exit? And at what multiple? And making sure that fits with our investment thesis. I think those are the three main pillars I like to look at. And then beyond that, of course, we have to look at the underlying intellectual property and the team. And it's always encouraging to see a team that has experience and has executed deals before, particularly if they've worked together and have been able to, start and exit a company. That's all very encouraging because otherwise you're learning as you go. And so the less you can do of that, the better off you are. In our first fund, we have 10 companies in our portfolio. I have several additional individual investments. And we're really looking at the intersection in our fund between healthcare and technology. So we have a couple of telemedicine solutions, which are really interesting and having some growth, but that's a very competitive space. And then we have some more unique solutions. One is a B2B blood pressure monitoring system, which as an anesthesiologist, I see a tremendous potential value add to hospital stays and safety. We have a company that can monitor fetal oxygenation while the baby's in utero and provide a safer birthing experience for both the mom and baby. We think that's a really important innovation. We're invested in a sleep medicine platform that's had a great traction with the VA and with Kaiser, and we think it will continue to do very well. So to name a few, those are some companies. One other one is an artificial intelligence company called Lucid Bio that is able to determine the consistency and the makeup of plaque in arteries to assess whether those are vulnerable plaques or very stable plaques. And that's something we look at for cardiac risk and stroke risk. So that'll be a very important innovation. So really what we're looking for ultimately, and what makes me very passionate about this space, is that these innovations, yes, as investments, they're great because they can be very successful remuneratively, but they can really change medicine. They can help people. And I think that's really exciting.
And moving on, let's hear from Eyal Lifshitz, co-founder and managing partner at Peregrine Ventures.
We are venture capitals here in Israel. We invest for more than 20 years. We invest in life science companies in Israel and around the world. We invest in pharma companies. We invest in medical devices.
What does he believe are the key factors behind a successful biotech and life science company?
That's an excellent question. And the truth is that it's very difficult to answer. We always discuss what is the most important and the right combination between a good team, an interesting technology, and being with the right technology at the right timing. And at the end of the day, it's a combination. Sometimes, especially if you invest early, you will have an excellent research and development team, which will not be the same team which will take the company through the more advanced stages in regulatory and then sell the company. You will have to bring in more experienced management, which will be able to take the company into the next stages. And sometimes it works very well. So this means that it's not really the management from day one, the management which will actually sell the company, which is really needed to be there at day one. So if you are an early stage investor and you're looking for the wow management, which will be able to take a company public and be a Wall Street management, a Wall Street CEO, CFO, etc., stuff. You won't find a lot of interesting companies because you won't have the management that you would need. From the other side, it's very important to have strong R&D capabilities at the early stages. The presentations, the PowerPoint doesn't have to be as nice as the patents, as the IP, as solid research and development capabilities which go fast. Because at the end of the day, in every space, it's a race. You will never be the only one in the space. And even if you lead that space, if you want to move very fast and very accurate with as little mistakes as possible, there will be others around. So it's a combination between strong research and development capabilities. Those people managing the company at the early stage, they have to be ready for late stage to accept additional management that will come on top of them. So it's something as an early stage investor, you really want to prepare the ground for that as early as possible. In addition to that, you need to have the input from the market all the time. And it has to be a technology which is really not only interesting on the R&D side, but it has to be something which regulatory-wise, FDA, and then you can really get through FDA, not something which is going to be impossible, and not only go through FDA, but something which also has to get reimbursement later. So all of these, it's a combination between the technology, the team at the beginning and the team which you will add on, and the market. There has to be a clear market for the product which you develop quite early.
And finally, let's hear from Ron Palawoda, president of the Palawoda Group.
We focus using investment teams in both private equity and venture capital, primarily focused on opportunities in the United States. And in the ventures side, we maintain 3 evergreen funds targeting early stage startups. One in the digital media space, second in the green technology space, looking for eco-friendly ways of doing business. One of the things that I think COVID highlighted is the importance of the relationship between the entrepreneurs and the investors, okay? So it's not necessarily what you're doing. So it's not necessarily the idea that you're trying to advance. It's your ability to adjust to different market conditions, to new competitions, to unforeseen events like COVID, okay? And being able to demonstrate execution to the investor so they're able to see how you respond to challenge, okay? How you respond to the competitive landscape. And in unforeseen events like COVID, for example, investors will be then more comfortable to continue to support you. And I think regardless of whatever sector or whatever service or products that you're offering, that relationship needs to be not only maintained, but become more robust, okay? Especially now in the uncertainty that we're facing. So that's kind of important. One of the challenges, especially with IT and healthcare, is regulatory risk, okay? So with the collection of all this health data, consumer-based health data, there are questions about who owns the medical information, who owns your health data, who has access to it, and where that data is stored, literally what country. So as that landscape changes, okay, you need to be able to communicate that to investors and be able to prepare yourself for the next phase of capital support. So that is, I think, the most important thing over the last 18 months that we've seen. We've been really excited over the last more than 10 years now about the application of tools of insights to large scale data. So we've been focusing on data-rich applications in the health tech sectors and other sectors as well. And we've been excited about domain-specific AI engines, for example. So engines that analyze personal biomarkers to track the experiences of disease and to accelerate treatment breakthroughs. We've been excited about molecular diagnostics. So we have long-term investments in genomics and precision medicine. And we're really looking to augment those, in the next few months.
As we conclude this episode, it's evident that investing in early-stage companies requires a multifaceted approach. Oren highlighted the three major areas he evaluates when considering a company: the clinical solution and its application, the actual business and growth potential, and the capital risk involved. Maximilian emphasized the importance of timing and the potential of a strong team in creating an exciting investment opportunity. Eyal emphasized the need for market input and a clear market for the product being developed. Carter's focus in agriculture is to build products that are not only faster and more nutritious, but also inherently sustainable. Ron highlighted the importance of the relationship between entrepreneurs and investors, particularly in navigating challenges and unforeseen events like the COVID-19 pandemic. Evaluating the science, understanding the market, assessing the team, and considering regulatory risks are all critical elements that these investors carefully weigh. Remember, investing isn't just about financial returns, it's about investing in innovations that can transform industries and positively impact lives. We hope you found their perspectives valuable and applicable to your own venture capital endeavors. Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Halty Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.